Eric Block, who's been a friend of ours for quite some time now. And we have a lot of admiration for what he's been building, not just for helping fellow dental clinicians, but just improving dentistry overall. Welcome, Dr. Block.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, it's our pleasure. You're practicing out in Boston, right? If I'm correct?
Yeah, so I'm about 30 minutes west of Boston, a town called Acton, so near Concord, Lexington area. I actually live in the town as well, so I have like a 9-minute commute. So yeah, about 30 minutes west of Boston.
Yeah, and you're one of the influencers I consider, and many others do as well too, on Facebook and Instagram. Tell us about how often do you practice, and what have you started in the entrepreneurial world?
So I'm about 3.5, 4 days a week right now, general practice. It's a family practice. Mostly we see families, general dentistry. I do a lot of implants as well. 2-year residency. I went to Nova Southeastern for dental school, and then I did a 2-year residency at BU, which was all implants. I graduated there in 2004. And since then, I've just been in family practice and ended up moving to the town just before my daughter was born about 9 years ago. So fully entrenched in the community and as like the local town dentist. And actually, over the quarantine during COVID, I had the idea for this website, marketplace website called Deals for Dentists, which would connect dentists and vendors and promote companies' new customer offers. And I finally actually had the time to put it together and do it. And that was my shutdown project. And that turned into a podcast because I was having so many great conversations with dentists and vendors. And I just loved hearing people's stories, whether it was from a dentist or a vendor. And then ultimately, I ended up writing a book called The Stress Free Dentist, all about my experience dealing with burnout and stress and anxiety. And I wanted to share that story as well. So
Would love
I
to
ended
hear
up
that.
yeah, I wrote the book called The Stress Free Dentist, and that came out last year. And it was just all about my story about I was a dentist that was just totally burned out. I'd actually thought about leaving the profession multiple times. And a lot of it was, I was just so nervous and anxious all the time. I was so afraid of getting sued. I was so afraid of getting a bad review or an uncomfortable situation with a patient or a staff member, that I just kind of bottled up everything inside. And I was just putting too much pressure on myself. And I thought about leaving dentistry to become a lawyer so I could be the one doing the suing. I wanted to flip the script so I could be on the other side of it. That's how nervous and anxious I was. And I realized that, I couldn't practice like that for the next 30 years with all that anxiety and stress. And when I was at Tulane, I was a psychology major, and I'd always wanted to go to therapy. I knew it was going to be part of my life. I just never actually did it. And at the point where I was totally burned out and thinking about leaving the profession, I looked at myself in the mirror and I said, "Now's the time, buddy." So I picked up the phone and I called a local therapist and I started going through therapy. And that was a major eureka moment for me where I just figured out what made me tick and who I was and why I was the way I was. And most of it was up here. It was me putting too much pressure on myself, me trying to please everyone else, me saying yes to everyone else. And ultimately, I realized that I had to start taking care of myself before I could start taking care of others. That was a major change for me was, just kind of figuring out what made me tick and coming out on the other side. And actually, now I actually really look forward to going to work every day.
What do you think are the major pain points that attribute towards that burnout piling up? Do you think from just talking to your fellow colleagues out there that have had similar experiences, do you feel as if the potential of litigation is a major concern from them, or the physical brutalness that your bodies take, bending over all day long, possibly causing stenosis or financial distress? Like, what do you notice are commonalities out there that lead to burnout?
Yeah, definitely everything you mentioned, all the above, the physicality of the profession. You're in these awkward positions for, long periods of time. You're staring at this 1 millimeter space and you're doing this over and over and over again. And it really takes a toll on the body, and physical pain causes mental pain. So if you're someone that is having a neck pain or a back pain or wrist pain or your eyes hurt, then you're not a happy camper, and that's going to affect you mentally as well. And for me, a lot of it was being an introvert. I'm very introverted. I decompress by not talking to people. I decompress by just being on the computer or watching TV or listening to music or going for a jog. So the social aspect of the profession was a grind for me, going from room to room and always being on for the patient and trying to give that patient that great experience. And I really felt like there was something wrong with me. And why am I so exhausted at the end of the day? And a lot of it was the social aspect of the profession. And that was very important for me, is to realize that nothing wrong with me. And a lot of dentists are like this. It's a very social profession, it's physically a grind. And you have to kind of always be on for that patient. You can't be the tired, sad, cranky dentist. No one wants. So you got to kind of act and pretend like everything's great and give that patient that great experience. I think that has a lot to do with it. I think also dentists are, a lot of times, they're solo practitioners. They're in their own little bubble of the practice. They don't have any peers that they work with. I think reaching out to peers is so important, to talk to people that have walked in your footsteps, that know what you're going through on a day-to-day basis. That's really important, to find peers, mentors, coaches, consultants. I wish I had done that earlier on in my career, but I think a lot of dentists probably struggle because of that, not reaching out, or they just give into the false belief that this is the profession I chose. It is what it is. There's nothing I can do. It's a grind, and I'm just going to have to be doing this until I retire. But that was not okay for me. So that's why I took the steps that I took to get back to, actually enjoying going to work.
Peer-to-peer mentorship. What a novel networking business idea to
Yeah,
establish
it's
one day.
almost like someone should, like, take that and run with it.
Do you feel like there's a silver bullet to all this? Like the work-life balance, would that fix everything? Or is it like a multiple layer type of challenge?
Yeah, I struggle with that every day, every week. I feel like having other things going on other than just clinical dentistry has really helped me. So having my websites, the podcast, the social media, the books, getting involved with dental companies and speaking, all that. People ask me, like, how do you do all that? And doesn't that stress you out? And how do you have time for all that? And my answer is actually, it actually relieves stress for me, because it takes my mind off of clinical dentistry. For example, if a patient cancels now, I actually used to get all upset and, hey, what happened to that patient? We need to get someone in, call the next person, try to get them in. Now I'm actually kind of relieved, because I can go to my back office and work on my emails or my website or my articles or books. So I think that has really, really helped me.
Do you feel that a lot of DSOs benefit from, not by design, but let's say by accident, coming across a lot of practice owners that are just so burned out that it's like the right timing for these DSOs to just come in and say, "Let me just give you an offer. Come join us and we'll handle everything. You just got to be a clinician and I'll take 80% of the stress off your plate." Do you feel as if that is that like a common scenario that happens?
Yeah. And I think even more now, I think dentists are more stressed than ever because of the staff shortages, the pent up demand. There's patients, a lot of them hadn't been to the dentist in 18 months or 2 years, and there's so much pent up demand. Dentists are very busy. Their patients are there, they're available. A lot of them work from home, so they can come in at Thursday at 9 a.m. now, whereas before they couldn't. So the work is there, but I think a lot of dentists are short staffed, so they're having to work even harder. So sure, I think at this moment, more than ever, that a dentist that may have been thinking about retiring or selling to a DSO is probably going to do it sooner than maybe they would have before COVID.
How does a practice owner that decides to go from 5, 6 days a week clinical, how is that owner able to justify the financial means they have to take home if they're only cutting back to like 2 or 3 days a week?
Yeah, so for me, it's adding more high value services. I'm adding clear liners, sleep and airway. I do a lot of implants. We've developed a membership plan. We're going out of network with some insurances. If I didn't have a lot of those treatments or those options, I'd probably still be at 5 days a week. But because I'm adding more high value services, I'll actually be able to do that, meaning go down from 5 to 4 to 3 days a week and not drop my production. I'll still be able to be very productive. Now, I've been practicing for 20 years. So, I think for someone that's just coming out of school, it's not as easy as that. I've created workflows that I'm very, efficient and productive. And I know what works for me in my hands, and other dentists may still be trying to figure it out. But I would say that adding high value treatment or treatment that someone else in the office doesn't provide, I think is huge to be productive.
Are there any particular vendors that you just see that fix this challenge for you of being able to increase your product production, but decrease the amount of time that you need to actually be hands on with the practice?
Yeah, so I would say that there's a few things that have really helped me. Adding new technology has made me look forward to going to work. It's kind of re-energized me and some of the staff. And it's also having a game plan in my head has been extremely helpful. So I'm very efficient and productive when I'm working on patients because I go into that procedure and that patient with a game plan. I go from A to B to C to D, whereas I used to just wing it and I didn't really have a game plan. And that caused a lot of stress. And that also caused me to be not as productive and efficient. So I think no matter, what vendors you're using or what materials you're using or what technology, if you have a game plan and you're going into it with that mindset, then I really think that that's going to help a lot of people become more efficient and productive.
What's a game plan look like? Like, do you have like a playbook sheet that you kind of like just fill out mentally or in
Yeah.
person?
It's more involved with implants. I do that more. So that takes longer because I'm virtually planning the implant. I'm taking a CBCT. I'm taking a digital scan of the patient, then I'm merging those two together. And then I'm printing a surgical guide. That's the most involved game plan. But a simple game plan is a filling or a crown. I'm looking at that x-ray, I'm looking at that tooth, and I'm looking at that patient. And just, in a minute or two, I've figured out that, okay, this is the materials I'm going to use. And these are the steps that I'm going to take. And a lot of the times it's the same. I say 95% of the time, I do the crown prep the same exact way every time. So I go from burr to burr to burr to step, and I try not to go backwards. So that's a game plan. For example, doing back to back fillings, I know exactly how I want to prep the tooth with the exact burr, what materials I'm going to use, and to me, that almost puts my brain like on autopilot. So I don't have to think as much. And it makes it so much quicker and efficient. And also, my assistant knows what I'm doing and they can anticipate my moves. And then the patients are like, wow, that was fast. So I think it's kind of win 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 to not just sit down and say, all right, I'm going to pick up this burr and I'm going to use that material and just wing it without a game plan.
What's the involvement of the supporting cast, your DA, your hygienist, your office manager in helping getting this game plan prepped up? And how do you set aside time to do it?
Yeah. So I would say clinically, the assistant is very important that they see exactly what you're doing and why you're doing it. And that way they can, after, a certain amount of reps, they can anticipate your moves. And that's a lot less stressful for them. They know exactly what you need and when you need it. So when we have a new assistant, I will actually prep like a filling or a crown on a typodon on a model, and I'll show the assistant exactly what I do and how I do a filling, what materials I use, and then I'll actually have them do it. I'll have them do the filling, not actually drill, but have them use the materials. And then that way they get an idea of why I'm going from A to B to C to D. And they can kind of see, the reasons that I'm using certain materials or instruments. And then it just becomes repetition. And you do it over and over and over again. And also, I think it helps to write down how you like to have your room prepped, what instruments you like, and have that on a like a spreadsheet or on a computer where it's easily accessible. Because if you have a new staff member come in or someone's out that day, then the next person can see exactly what materials you need and how you like the room set up. So I think having the assistant on the same page as you is extremely important.
That's genius. In 25 years of dentistry, I never heard that before. That's genius. I love it. Are you one of the rare few that doesn't have much staffing challenges, or do you have any staffing challenges at all?
We do. Yeah, for sure we do. We could use two more hygienists and three more assistants, and for sure we do. I think it's everywhere. And it's not just dentistry. I think it's every industry. Yeah, I went across the street to the bike shop to get my kids their new bikes, and the owners, it's a small business, and I could tell they were just so overwhelmed because they're having staffing issues and they're having to do more work themselves. So we're feeling it, and I really need to take the time out to appreciate my staff members that have continued to show up every day. But yeah, it's a grind, and like I was saying, we're so busy that I could use more help, all aspects of the office.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Eric Block, you're one of the most humble, relatable type of guys that I see other dentists being able to talk to. And the help you're giving dentistry is just it's tremendous. I mean, as a fellow clinician, I don't know many like you. Kudos to you.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for joining us today.
Absolutely.